Your car's been trying to tell you something for weeks, and every mile you ignore it, the repair bill's going up. 20 years in the shop, and I've lost count how many times someone's driven in with a noise they got used to and left with a bill 10 times what it should have been. Not because they're stupid, because no one ever told them what to listen for. So today, I'm translating. The clicks, the hums, the squeals, the knocks, what they actually mean, what they cost if you catch them early, and what they cost if you don't. Plus, how to walk into a shop and not get taken for a ride. Let's start with the one I hear people explain away the most. Brake grinding is one of those noises people live with because they tell themselves it still stops, so it's fine. I get it. You've got places to be. But that sound is usually the moment your brake pads are already gone. What's actually happening is simple. There's no more pad material left, so the metal backing plate is now rubbing straight on the rotor. Metal on metal. And every mile you drive like that, you're basically machining your own rotors down. If you're unlucky, the heat and the mess can start taking the caliper with it as well. Money-wise, this is where people turn a small job into a big one. Catch it early, and you're often looking at pads on an axle, say $150 to $300. Leave it until it's grinding, and you're usually into pads and rotors, more like $400 to $900 plus. And if that caliper seizes up on one wheel, that one corner can easily land in the $700 to $900 range. Here's the bit that surprises people. That earlier squeal you ignored? That's often not random. Most pads have a little metal wear tab built in. When the pad gets down to about 3 millimeters, that tab touches the rotor and squeals to warn you, so you fix it before you destroy the rotor. It's annoying on purpose. It's trying to save you money. Now, if the grinding comes with a longer stopping distance, a steering wheel vibration when you brake, or the pedal feels low or soft, don't treat that like normal maintenance. Treat it like a safety issue and get it checked straight away. And when you do go to a shop, say this: are the rotors still within spec to resurface, or do they need replacement? Then ask them to show you the pad thickness, and if you can, ask to see the old parts. A decent place won't get weird about that. People come into the shop every week and start with, "My car makes a noise." And I get it, hard to describe. I was under a Civic last week when someone at the counter just goes, "Frank, it's making a thing." That's it, a thing. Took us 20 minutes just to figure out what he meant. So here's the quickest way to translate a sound into something a mechanic can actually price. 3 questions. Where, when, how? Where is it? Front or rear, left or right, under the bonnet or more under the car? When does it happen? Braking, turning, accelerating, idling, cold start, or only at one specific speed? How does it change? Does it follow engine revs or road speed? Does it get louder in a turn? Does it fade once it's warm? 2 fast separators. If the noise changes when you rev the engine while parked, it's usually engine side, belt, pulley, accessory. If it only changes with speed down the road, it's more tires, wheel bearings, CV joints, or driveline. And do yourself a favor, grab a 10-second phone recording and note the exact conditions: speed, turning or straight, braking or not, and cold or warm. That little bit of info saves time, and it stops you paying for guessing. All right, engine knocking. This is the one that makes people either panic for no reason, or, worse, keep driving when they really shouldn't. There are 2 different knocks folks mix up all the time. The first is a light pinging sound under load, like marbles rattling in a tin. Usually when you're accelerating up a hill or putting your foot down. That can be the wrong fuel, low octane, carbon buildup, or something simple like tired spark plugs. I've seen that turn into a 50 to 150 quid, or bucks, depending where you are. Sometimes it's literally just putting the correct fuel in and letting the engine calm down. The second one is the nasty one, a deeper, rhythmic, metallic hammering that speeds up with RPM. That's rod knock territory, and now you're talking rebuild or replacement money, $2.5 to 12 grand plus, depending on the car. One thing that catches people out, modern engines can hide knock by pulling timing, so it still drives, but it feels weak and it's not happy inside. Hard stop rules. If you've got knocking and the oil light comes on, flickers, or you've got low oil pressure, shut it down. Don't limp it. And if it's deep hammering at idle that gets worse with revs, don't do the "I'll just see if it goes away" thing. Quick check. Does it only happen under acceleration, or does it knock sitting still at idle? Cold only that fades can be harmless wear noise you monitor. Heavy knock that sticks around is the one you take seriously. Quick one for you lot. Anyone ever ignored a knock and learned the hard way? Or caught it just in time? Drop it in the comments. I've heard some proper stories over the years. All right, here's one that catches people out because it's the same sort of high-pitched noise, but it can be two totally different problems. First one is a belt squeal. You'll hear it on a cold start, when it's wet outside, when you give it a quick rev, or right when you turn the aircon on and the engine suddenly has to work harder. Most of the time it's a worn or shiny glazed belt, a weak tensioner, a tired little pulley, or the belt's got oil or coolant on it. If you deal with it early, you're usually talking, 70 to 250 bucks. Leave it, and if that belt snaps, you can lose charging, you can overheat, and now you're paying for a tow and a much bigger day out. That's how it turns into 4 figures. Second noise is more of a whine, and it shows up mainly when you're turning. Car park is the giveaway. That's often power steering fluid low, or air in the system, and if you keep driving it like that, you can cook the pump. A top-up and a proper check is cheap. A pump isn't, commonly $650 to $1,000. Quick way to split them. If it changes when you turn the wheel, think steering system. If it changes with revs or when you switch electrics on, think belt area. And if you ever lose power steering, don't panic. The car still steers, it just gets really heavy at low speed. I did 4 years of rally driving with no power steering. Brilliant fun. Absolute nightmare in a parking garage. So don't ignore it. Just get it checked. You know that clicking or popping you hear when you're turning into a parking space? Full lock, nice and slow? Loads of people ignore it because the car still drives fine. And to be fair, it usually does. For a while. Most of the time, that noise starts as a torn CV boot. It's just a rubber cover that keeps grease in and dirt out. Once it splits, the grease flings out, grit gets in, and the joint starts wearing. That's when the clicking gets louder, especially on tighter turns. Quick check you can do. Find an empty lot and do a couple of slow, tight circles left and right. If it's louder on a hard turn, that's often the outer CV joint on the side taking the load. Money-wise, catching a boot early might be a couple hundred, say $250 to $500. Leave it until the joint's worn and you're commonly into a full axle, more like $900 to $1,400 per side. And if that joint lets go completely, you can lose drive to that wheel, and it can start stressing other bits in the driveline. Not something you want finding out at speed. If this saves you from a 4-figure axle job, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe. Right, because that same little turn test helps with the next noise too. The hum everyone blames on tires. You know that slow circle test I mentioned for the clicking? It's useful for this one too. That humming or growling that rises with speed. A bad wheel bearing usually sounds like a steady hum that gets louder the faster you go. And here's the giveaway. When you gently steer left and right at, say, 40 or 50, it often changes. If it gets louder when you turn left, it can mean the bad bearing's on the right because you're loading that side up. Not always perfect, but it's a strong clue. Tires can make a very similar noise, especially if they're chopped up from wear. But tire noise tends to change less when you steer, and you'll often feel a bit of vibration or see uneven wear if you look closely. And don't mix it up with a diff whine. If the pitch changes on acceleration versus coasting, often louder on the gas, that's usually driveline, not tires. Mate of mine brought his Mustang over for a quick look last month. He'd been blaming cheap tires for 6 months. Rear diff whine the whole time. Cost-wise, a bearing might be $250 to $500 a corner. Ignore it, and you can turn it into hubs, brakes, axles. $1,000 or $2,000 isn't rare. Worst case, things get properly unsafe. And don't get finessed at a shop. If they say probably tires, ask them to prove it. Show the change on the turn test, or show play or noise on the lift. Easy enough. All right, this one's the noise where you can usually breathe a bit. You'll hear a sort of tinny, metallic rattle from under the car. Most common at idle, on startup, or when you just gently pull away. It sounds awful, like something's about to fall off, and half the time it's basically a loose bit of metal doing exactly that. Usually it's a heat shield, thin metal cover that sits around the exhaust to stop heat cooking the floor, wiring, all that. The problem is the little bolts and brackets rust. The shield cracks, and then it just buzzes and rattles like a biscuit tin. In the shop, a lot of these get fixed with something as simple as a clamp or a small bracket. Pocket change sometimes. If it's too far gone and we replace it properly, you're more in that $150 to $300 range depending on the car. Here's the tip. If the rattle changes or goes away when you lightly rev it, or it's worst right at idle and low speed, heat shield is high on the list. But don't let that sound make you lazy about other symptoms. Because if you've got that rattle, plus a rotten egg smell, a noticeable loss of power, or the check engine lights join the party, now you're talking catalytic converter territory. That's not just a shield, and it's not something you want to keep gambling on. Most people walk into a shop and say, "It's making a noise," and hope for the best. And I get it, cars are stressful. But that's also how you end up agreeing to work you don't understand. Do 3 things before you go in. Get a 10-second phone recording. Write down where it's coming from, when it happens, how it changes, and add one more. What changed recently? Pothole, new tires, battery went flat, any work done, any fluid topped up. That little detail saves a lot of guessing. Then don't ask for a price. Ask for an itemized quote, parts, labor, and how many labor hours they're billing. And ask them to show you the failure. Pad thickness, belt cracking or glazing, torn CV boot, bearing play, whatever it is. If you're paying, it's fair to see it. And yes, ask for the old parts back. Quick reality check. A normal parts markup is usually 10 to 20%. If it's 200 to 300%, or they won't give line items, or they're rushing you, walk away. And here's your 15-second severity cheat sheet. Stop now. Deep knock with an oil light, brake grinding with a soft or low pedal, or you suddenly lose steering assist. This week, belt squeal, clicking on turns, humming or growling with speed, steering whine, especially if the fluid's low. Breathe but verify. Heat shield rattle, unless you've got a smell, power loss, or an engine light. Catching a sound early is the cheapest repair you'll ever do. My dad ran this shop before me. Always said, show 'em the part, explain the problem, let them decide. I've stuck with that, and it works.